Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Once again, at this time, our tradition is to go around the room and introduce ourselves. So let me start with me. My name is Oswaldo.
My name is Lassiter.
Mark.
Michael.
I'm Greg.
Kevin.
My name is Mark. I'm Jim.
Don.
My name is Harley. Jen. Michael.
Tim.
My name is Ray. Francesco. Joseph.
AJ.
Leor.
My name is Cass.
Mike.
Hello, I'm Joseph.
Grisha. I'm Don. Donald.
Jason.
Richard.
My name is Bruein. Amos.
I'm Hal. Peter.
So it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, one of our own, David Lewis. David has been following the Dharma path for over 40 years and has a degree in comparative religious studies. He started out in the Tibetan Shambhala tradition and has been practicing Vipassana meditation since moving to San Francisco a while back, about 25 years ago. For the past 7 years, he's been practicing intensively. David is a member of the Mission Dharma Sangha, where he teaches an introduction to insight meditation class. He's a longtime member of the Gay Buddhist Fellowship and also leads a weekly sitting group for seniors every Friday morning. David is a graduate Spirit Rock Meditation Center's dedicated practitioners program and has been on the teaching team for Spirit Rock retreats. So welcome once again, David.
Thank you, Oswaldo. It's lovely to be here this morning. I have a lot of mixed feelings this morning, and some of them stem from a mistake I made of looking at the New York Times as soon as I got up this morning and learning that Oliver Sacks died this morning. He was just a man that I have greatly admired for many years. For those of you that might not know him, he's a neurologist that wrote for lay people, kind of made the science of neurology popular for lay people. And one of his books was called Awakenings, was made into a movie. And he was a polymath. He was a fascinating man that I just a couple of months ago read his biography, or autobiography that only just came out this year. It's called On the Move, with a really hunky picture of him on the cover. He was gay. So I just wanted to acknowledge Oliver Sacks this morning. Also, my talk is a little bit of a hodgepodge. I did prepare a talk for this morning, and I've got it sitting here next to me. But I had a couple of other motivations that in the last week or two have kind of maybe go in other directions. So we'll see how it goes. One of which was Benjamin Young's excellent talk last week. I don't know how many of you were here, but he gave a good talk about meditation. And I kind of wanted to follow up with a little bit more of that, riff off of his talk. I'm sorry he's not here today. And the other thing that motivated me was a few weeks ago we had small group discussions in GBF, and afterwards a member of the Sangha, who's also not here today, came up to me and asked me a really good question. He said, how is it, he says, you keep talking about meditation and direct experience, and he said, I kind of get that that's what meditation is about, is our direct experience of whatever's happening in the moment. He says, how does that produce wisdom? And furthermore, how do I apply it to dealing with my anxiety in life? And as soon as I heard that question, which I did not answer very adequately in the moment, I thought, that's a whole talk in itself. So I want to talk a little bit about meditation today, and how it produces wisdom and how it produces compassion, how those things arise from direct experience, as opposed to thinking about things. Benjamin last week described a whole bunch of different meditation practices, most of which were concentration practices. In the suttas, in the Buddha's teachings, well, in the first place, let me say there's dozens, if not hundreds, of different ways to meditate, and they all work. They all can be used for different purposes. The Buddha kind of, in my understanding of the suttas, categorized them into two kind of general categories, two different general categories, which are not mutually exclusive and work well together and separately. One is concentration practices. Mostly that's what Benjamin talked about last week, and the other one is vipassana, or insight meditation. And in a nutshell, I'm oversimplifying, but concentration practice is when, in your meditation, you pick one object of your meditation, just one object, like the breath. I am going to focus my attention, my full attention on my breath, to the exclusion of everything else. If thoughts arise, if bodily sensation arise, I'm going to bring my attention back to my breath, stick with my breath. So it's a narrow focus, concentration is. Useful because it helps us develop tranquility, it helps us develop concentration, obviously, the ability to stay with an object, to be able to stay with our experience. There's a good deal said about it in the Buddha's teachings. The other practice, very broadly defined practice, is vipassana practice, and that's a very wide focus. So instead of just picking one object of meditation, in vipassana is we pay attention to whatever's arising in the moment, no matter what it is. Any phenomena that comes to us through our five senses and our mind. Smell, taste, touch, bodily sensation. And the Buddha, I think most of you probably know, the Buddha included the mind as a sixth sense. So a thought arising is no different than a sound arising. If we don't follow it, it doesn't become thinking. So I'd like to say there's a difference between thoughts and thinking. So in vipassana, we open up to anything that happens in our direct experience of the present moment, and notice what our response to that is. So that's vipassana. Very often, we tend to focus on, when we're doing vipassana meditation, or even sometimes concentration meditation, we tend to focus on the problems. We focus on our restlessness, or our sleepiness, or wanting to be someplace else, or doing something else, or just the need to be thinking. The kind of compulsive thinking that we do in everyday life comes to us in meditation. We don't shut that out in vipassana meditation. We try to meet it with a friendly, open heart, and at the same time not encourage it, not follow it. One of the definitions of meditation, very simple definition of meditation that I saw recently, is meditation is simply not following our thoughts. So there's nothing wrong with thoughts arising. We just try not to follow them. Likewise, bodily sensations or anything else that comes to us through our senses. We just welcome that in the moment and notice its changing nature. But our attention tends to be drawn to either what we don't like or what we do like, what we want to chase or what we want to push away. What we sometimes miss in our meditation practice is the moments of quiet, the moments of stillness, the moments of spaciousness in between thoughts, spaciousness in between breaths. That spaciousness that arises sometimes, that we notice sometimes in meditation, is our natural mind. The Buddha taught that our mind is inherently spacious. So this spaciousness and tranquility and quiet that is so often described in the suttas and by meditation teachers like me is not something you have to go out and get. It's something that's already there. You already have it. So meditation, another way of thinking about meditation is looking at all those things that get in the way of the natural spaciousness of our mind and relating to them in a different way. So this is why meditation is important. And I've been asked before here and other sanghas about, can I be a Buddhist without meditating? Yes, you certainly can. You can be. There's lots of different ways of being a Buddhist, and you don't have to call yourself or identify with being a Buddhist at all. To the best of my knowledge, the Buddha was not a Buddhist. He was a teacher that offered practices. Any more than that, for that matter, that Jesus was a Christian. The Buddha offered practices, and he offered an eightfold path for liberating ourselves from discomfort and suffering, and for finding lasting happiness in our life. And two of the factors of that eightfold path are concentration and mindfulness. The two different kinds of meditation that I've mentioned this morning. So you don't have to meditate. But if you want to change the way you relate to your mind, you're not going to do it by thinking. You're going to have to do it by this experiencing direct experience. And that's not our natural way of relating to our mind. So it takes a little bit of training. I like to say it's like learning a language or learning to play an instrument. It takes a certain amount of effort and a willingness to try something different. The Buddha had a famous teaching to a group called the Kalamas. And it was basically a village, a group of people that he showed up to do a teaching, and someone in the village asked him, well, why should we be listening to you instead of the guy that was here last week or the other teachers that are competing for our attention? And the Buddha said, well, you shouldn't necessarily trust me just because I'm the guy that's here this week teaching. You should check it out for yourself. Check out the teachings, the practices for yourself. And we Westerners love this teaching of the Kalamas because it's generally defined as being the Buddha advocating free inquiry. There is no dogma to this religion. There is maybe no religion. But it's a set of practices. Check it out. Check it out and see if it works for yourself. If it does, and he says this, I should have brought the sutta with me. He says, if it doesn't work for you, then try something else. I think sometimes this teaching is misinterpreted to a certain extent because the way we Westerners understand it is the way that we were educated. And we think, well, that I'm going to look at the dogma of this religion and compare it to the dogma of another religion or whatever I was raised in and compare them and decide which one's most true for me, and then that's what I'm going to believe in. And it's all about belief and thinking. And that's not where the Buddha was coming from. The Buddha did not encourage metaphysics. If people asked him metaphysical questions, he tended either not to answer them or responded with a question of his own. What's your direct experience? So what the Buddha was saying is try out the practice. Try out this practice that I'm suggesting. Try getting in touch with your direct experience and seeing whether wisdom arises out of that. So, when I meditate, my stuff comes up. I can't prevent it. My fears, my worries, my thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch later on, my planning. And what I notice about my stuff when it comes up, and this is particularly true after doing quite a bit of meditation practice, but you might have noticed it just this morning, is that pretty much all of my stuff has common characteristics, one of which is that it's conditioned. This is a very important concept in the Buddha's teaching, this idea of conditioning, that who we are, what we believe, what we consider to be our personality is pretty much a result of a lifetime of conditioning. It's what our parents taught us, our teachers taught us, our life experiences brought us up against, our work world, our relationships, have created a whole set of conditioning that have created this identity and this sense of who I am. Some of which is true and some of which is not. I have ideas about myself. Maybe I'm not good enough, or I'm not whole, or there's something missing in my life that maybe aren't true. But I picked that up somewhere along the way. The very fact that most of us in this room are gay, and probably were not raised in an accepting environment of being gay, conditioned us. And this is going to be one of the topics of our retreat next month. Our rejection of that old identity of what our parents and our families might have wanted us to be, and our pride in coming out and being gay, that's all conditioning. We conditioned ourselves to a more true, more authentic sense of ourselves. But our conditioning is all habitual patterns. And you might notice when you meditate, or maybe if you're not meditating, you might notice anyway that we tend to think about the same things over and over again. We tend to be revisiting the same topics. Monks, the monastics, have studied the nature of the human mind from a personal experience. And one of the things that is said is that we have somewhere between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day. 90% of which are repeats. Check it out in your own experience. We sit and we think about the same stuff over and over again, and that becomes us. That's our habitual patterns. So one really useful place where and I'm talking about where wisdom arises from checking out our direct experience, one really useful thing to notice is those patterns. And if we can be kind and accepting and have some compassion for ourselves around that, it can provide a great deal of wisdom indeed. So that's one thing we might notice when we meditate. Another thing we might notice is that everything changes. Anybody notice that this morning when they were meditating? Maybe there was a thought, and then there was a bodily sensation, and then there was a noise coming from outside, and then the door opened and somebody came in, and my attention was directed, and then there was another thought, and then there was a sound, and then my nose itched. These are all phenomena, conditioned phenomena, that are happening to us one after another when we're meditating. And so our experience in meditation is, one metaphor for it is it's like a film on the old newsreels that looks like a constantly moving reality, but it's actually just a set of little frames, one after another, one after another. And in meditation, we can watch those frames happen one at a time. If we don't get attached to any of them, okay, there's a thought, there's a bodily sensation, there's a sound. And if we could just sit back and let that flow, let that pattern be, without getting attached to any one thing or another, without giving preference to thoughts, then you might find it generally fades into the background. Doesn't entirely go away. So meditation is not about getting rid of thoughts. It's developing a different relationship to them. Another thing, and I've kind of already said this, that we notice when we meditate is that a lot of the thoughts that we do have, or that arise, and some of the bodily sensations we have, are not pleasant. We're either wanting something, or we're wanting something else to go away, or we're thinking our experience is not tranquil enough and we should be making it better, or maybe we don't even want to be sitting here and we're thinking I'd really rather be doing something else, or we might be having doubt about whether I can even do this practice or not because I don't seem to be very good at it because I'm having all these thoughts. That's dukkha. So if you notice that in your meditation, if you notice a lot of stuff going on, some of which you don't like, you have just realized the First Noble Truth. You've had a powerful insight into the Buddha's First Noble Truth, which is dukkha. That life has a lot of dissatisfaction. It's the nature of our mind. It's the nature of our lives. That sometimes is the point at where people give up and quit and decide I'm not going to meditate because it's not working right for me. I'm not getting what I want. I'm not getting a tranquil, peaceful, serene mind. But what they've actually seen in that moment of dissatisfaction is the truth of dukkha. If we can view these experiences that we have in meditation as just a constant stream of changing phenomena, and if we can understand, as I was saying before, that this phenomena is largely conditioned, a piece of wisdom that might arise out of that is, it's all this conditioned stuff. I learned that from my dad. I learned that from my teacher. I learned another pattern from my first boyfriend. If we see the conditioned nature of phenomena, then we realize it's not me or mine. It's not essentially myself. This being that I think I am is like that newsreel of frames, of short moments of conditioned phenomena. So I've given a talk about this before, but what I've just described is the three characteristics of existence. The Buddha said if you simply approach the world with the direct experience of your senses, which is the only reality we have, right? Is there any true reality outside of what your senses are delivering right now? The past is memory, highly unreliable, right? The future is speculation, doesn't even exist yet. And when we're thinking, we're very largely either in the past or in the future. So if we want to experience reality, we're going to find it in the direct experience of the moment. What's going on right now? This moment for you in this room is the most important moment of your life. And now it's the next moment. So if we pay attention to our experience in our direct experience of the moment, we're going to see that it's impermanent, of an impermanent nature. It's largely unsatisfactory, and it's not me or mine. I don't have to take it personally. That is a huge leap. So that, in answer to my friend's question about how does this meditating and experience our direct experience, how does this help me? How does this bring wisdom or compassion into my life? That's the longer answer to that, is we see the nature of our experience and we see the nature of reality. And if we can understand that our experience is impermanent and consisting of dukkha and not me or mine, then we automatically have some compassion for ourselves. compassion automatically arises. We don't take as much seriously, take ourselves seriously as we have in the past. And the beautiful thing about that is when we have that kind of insight, and I'm talking about insight here, which insight arises out of Vipassana practice, more so than concentration practice. Insight arises out of Vipassana practice. We have insight into the nature of our experience. We can be much more forgiving about the ways we are that we might be critical of. And in doing so, we automatically become more forgiving. We become more compassionate towards other people. So this is how wisdom and compassion arise out of the direct experience of meditation. Compassion, I've probably said it before, is a combination, is a Latin combined word. Com means with, as it is in Spanish, and passio is suffering. Compassion means with suffering, or empathy. So deciding intellectually that we're going to be more compassionate people and we're going to go out and be nicer people in the world, it's not a bad thing to do, but it could lead to a codependent relationship that people were being compassionate for. In fact, maybe we're being more sympathetic than compassionate. You're different than I am, let me help you out because we're not alike. Compassion, true compassion on the other hand, is if we see our own stuff, the nature of our own suffering, if we can understand the nature of our own suffering, then we recognize that in other people, in other beings, whether they're friends or strangers. And we can be compassionate with them. So compassion starts at home. It starts with yourself. It starts with seeing your own suffering and accepting it kindly, knowing that it has the nature to be impermanent and that it's not personal necessarily. So these are profound lessons of the practice that the Buddha taught. And it all comes from direct experience, not thinking about things. Which is why it's hard for me to sit up here and talk about it, because I'm intellectualizing and putting into words direct experience. So we're already one step removed away. I'm going to take a break and read you a poem. Awareness Knowing Itself by Dana Folds. Settle in the here and now. Reach down into the center where the world is not spinning and drink this holy peace. Feel relief flood into every cell. Nothing to do. Nothing to be but what you are already. Nothing to receive but what flows effortlessly from the mystery into form. Nothing to run from or run toward, just this breath. Awareness, knowing itself as embodiment. Just this breath. Awareness, waking up to truth. So we don't have to meditate to be mindful, but it's the easiest path. I teach beginning meditation classes. It's actually the thing that I most enjoy doing. And the first thing I usually have to do when people come into a beginning meditation group is tell them what meditation is not, because we all have ideas about what meditation is and what we want to get out of it and what we want to produce. So we don't have to meditate to be mindful, but it's the easiest way. And one of the wonderful things, for those of you that have a regular meditation practice that you've probably noticed, is that with time, meditation itself and mindfulness itself becomes a habit of mind. It becomes one of those, becomes a conditioned thing. conditioned habit. And it spills over into everyday life. So the Buddha didn't tell us to meditate in order to become good meditators. The Buddha taught us to meditate as a tool towards becoming more mindful, more compassionate, having wisdom in everyday life. With time and experience, we start understanding what's going on in our mental experience, especially our thoughts, recognizing unskillful habits and cultivating skillful habits. So that's another stage of meditation, is recognizing what's going on in your mind. So some of our the dukkha habits of mind, the unhappiness, the discomfort that arises in our mind, is something that we can let go of once we recognize it. And another difficult thing about this Buddhist practice, which is sometimes described as against the stream, because it's against our normal patterns of thinking and being in the world, is that we don't want to turn towards our suffering. We spend our entire lives turning away from suffering. And the Buddha suggests turn toward your suffering with compassion, and it might lose some of its power. So it's a fundamentally important practice in Buddhism to not to stop turning away from our suffering. The Buddha had a metaphor, a name for our afflictive habits of mind. It was Mara. Mara is this a demon, actually, that is pictured in the Tibet tradition. The Mara is that little voice in our head that throws us. It's the devil on one shoulder, the angel on the other shoulder. The Buddha said that even in his own experience, that when temptations arose or unskillful habits of mind, the Buddha would just say, "I see you, Mara, I see you." Suggesting that merely recognizing an unskillful habit of mind, or anger, or desire, or frustration, or impatience, merely recognizing that, saying, "I see you, Mara," or "I see you, impatience," with some compassion, without trying to push it away, takes some of its power away. So not only is it not wrong to have thoughts in meditation, it's not wrong to recognize the nature of those thoughts. Because down the path, in your meditation practice, you're going to be able to cultivate skillful thoughts and mental states, and you'll be able to decondition some unskillful ones. That's how we change. That's how we transform ourselves. That is the personal transformation that happens through this practice. Zen Master Dogen, bet you've heard this, famously said, "To study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away." Greek philosophers said the same thing. The early Greeks, pre-Socratics particularly, were contemporaries of the Buddha. It's amazing how much similarity there was between the early Greek philosophy and Buddha's teaching. Know yourself. Know yourself not meaning think about yourself or have an idea of yourself or define yourself or build a brick wall around your identity. Know yourself, know your mental patterns. Know how you experience the world, because the only way that we can know the world is through these five senses and the mind. That's the only thing that's truly real for us. So this is how we cultivate wisdom and compassion, rather than thinking about things, which is radical change. Rather than thinking about things, we simply observe our direct experience in the present moment. And there's two questions you can ask when you sit down to meditate, which might be useful. One is, what's going on right now? And the second is, how am I responding to it? Two things that happen when we sit down to meditate. Something is going on. It might be mental, it might be physical, it might be emotional. The second thing that's going on is, how am I responding to it? So those are really the only two questions you have to ask in meditation. And just take a lively interest. Whether you like what's going on or not, well, that's actually how you're responding to it. What's going on is whatever it is. How I'm responding to it is probably either pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. So in the Buddha's great discourse, which I've talked about before, on factors of mindfulness, called the Satipatthana Sutta, the first factor of mindfulness is the body. So if you want to get in touch with the present moment, if you want to get out of your head, the place to start is to get into your body. Notice what's going on in your body. Bring your mind and your body together. That's the first most important foundation of mindfulness. The second foundation of mindfulness is what's called feeling tones or Vedas, the idea that, or the perception that whatever we're experiencing is either pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. Right now, whatever you're experiencing, whether it's a feeling about me or sitting in a chair or being in this room or being in your body, it's either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Just notice that without getting caught up in it. We don't have to change anything. So the practice is fundamentally very simple. Teaching meditation is very simple. Doing it is a little bit more of a challenge, right? Basically, sit down, pay attention to what's going on. This is a quote from the great 20th century meditation master, Thai meditation master, Ajahn Chah. It's his meditation instructions. Just go into a room, sit in the center of the room, open the doors and windows, and see who comes to visit. Doors and windows are your senses, right? Just go into a room, sit in the center of the room, open the doors and windows, and see who comes to visit. You will witness all kinds of scenes and actors, all kinds of temptations and stories, everything imaginable. Your only job is to stay in your seat. You will see it all arise and pass, and out of this, wisdom and understanding will come. So that's my best attempt at describing how wisdom and compassion arise out of the direct experience of meditation. And I thank you for your attention, and I'd like to hear what you think, or what your experience is in your own meditation.
I just think it's without question, but the words direct experience.
Yeah.
Exactly what is that experience you're speaking of? So maybe I have a sense of what that is. I think it's
Direct experience is your experience of whatever your senses are delivering to you in this moment.
So in other words, a thought comes in. I watched a coming routine, so I'm feeling my body constrict. The notion. It sounds like a circular thing, but the notion of experience is it literally, oh, my breath is becoming shorter, or my body's getting hotter, or is it really that experience you speak of?
It's that basic.
It's that because it's out the body.
My clothes are tingling right now. That's direct experience. Or a thought arises, or a sound. That's direct experience.
So, for example, let's say I was in a fight with somebody, and that thought comes into my mind. So I then might feel, I can be aware of, I can feel my body constricting somewhat. that's the experience you're speaking of.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm experiencing literally the thought is arising. I mean, yeah, there's the thought, and then the reaction to that thought is the experience. Is that how that?
Well, the thought is one experience. It's a really good example. You had a fight with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
A memory of that's one experience. Like, oh, this memory just arose. That's a direct experience.
Okay.
Your bodily reaction is another experience. That might come, that's the next thing that comes after.
Okay.
What's not direct experience is dwelling on the story behind it. Like, oh, okay, now I'm getting pissed off at the person that I had a fight with, or what they said, and I should have said that. That's what the Buddha called papancha, which is mental proliferation. That comes out, your direct experience kicked it off.
Mm-hmm.
But if we could just stay with, memory, ouch, bodily sensation, ooh, that's direct experience, as opposed to the story that comes out of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you again for another wonderful talk. All right, so I'm meditating, and out of the blue comes, well, it is not a sensation. It's as if all of a sudden there's a presence that's not me looking through my eyes. Am I going nuts? Or is that just part of meditation? I mean, that is sort of what I recognize. It's murky, but it's not about content or sensation other than an awareness of stillness and presence.
Well, I think the key word there might be awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Is
what
that
you
just
might
mental?
what you might be noticing is pure awareness, which is awareness is a wonderful thing. It's what notices things, but it's not me, as you described.
Yes.
It's not. It notices things, but it's not me. The other thing about awareness is we can turn our consciousness off. We can shut our ears, we can shut our eyes and not see. That shuts down eye consciousness. The one thing we cannot turn off is awareness. Try not being aware right now. It doesn't work. Awareness is always there, seeing. The other cool thing about awareness, and you can use awareness as a meditation object in itself. Just notice the nature of awareness and what awareness lights on. Awareness of a painful memory is not painful. The awareness is not painful. It might be a painful memory. Your awareness of a pain in the body is not painful. Your awareness of joy is not joyful. It's awareness of joy, and awareness of aversion is not hate. Awareness is pure in itself. Awareness simply notices. So I don't know if that is what's going on for you, but it is quite possible and encouraged in the practice to notice the nature of awareness.
Okay. I have another. Well, I'll wait.
Go ahead.
I've just been on 2 road trips where I've seen friends from 6th grade on. And the predominant sensation is the enduring nature of their personalities. They are the same. We feel the same when we're together. We feel like we return to our friendship zone. And I take comfort in that. That people, even though they have, great wealth of experience and challenges, but the vibe is still there. They are who they are. And I don't find that identity very well annotated in Buddhism. Or maybe I'm just reading the wrong stuff. It doesn't seem to be just a result of their family training or their experiences. They seem to
So you're saying they're inherently born with certain
Well, I
characteristics?
don't have a clue how it happens, but
That's kind of the nature and nurture thing.
right. They seem to be authentically themselves, and are known as such over time.
Yeah.
Is that delusion? It doesn't feel. I don't care. It's my authentic experience that when we're together, we get to return to a place where we can be honest.
You know, I just think, I think we all, however you define why we are the way we are, we are the way we are.
Right.
And in your life, in my life, we've connected with people that we connect with because there's something there. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that over time people don't change all that much. And I noticed that in my own experience. There's stuff. One of the things that Buddhist practice has brought to me that's been really helpful in my experience is to notice aspects of myself maybe that are conditioned over a lifetime that I'd like to change, but I can't, or it's just so difficult that I've come to accept. And that's just an enormous relief. One of the things for me, for the longest time, that I kind of regretted is that, unlike you, I'm an introvert. And I always wanted to kind of be an extrovert. It looked like extroverts had a better time. But fundamentally, I'm an introvert, which is maybe one of the reasons why I'm so drawn to a quiet practice of sitting by yourself in a quiet room. But I finally gave up on the whole idea of trying not to be an introvert and just appreciating the benefits of being an introvert and accepting that. Makes life a lot easier.
One of the commonest things that come up for me in meditation is the to-do list. I don't want to do the things I'm looking forward to, which order should I do them in, so forth and so on. And the fact that as I'm getting older, I sometimes forget things, and the to-do list is reminding me. And I have thought that was good awareness, that I was really aware of the to-do list. You did the thing now. No, that's not. That's a different kind of awareness. That's thought following or problem solving or something or other.
Yeah.
The awareness is that's a to-do list.
Yeah.
I see you.
Yeah.
And
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. The other thing a to-do list can be is your ego in the form of that little demon Mara on your shoulder. Your ego saying, I'm not entirely comfortable with what's going on right now in this moment, so I'm going to review the to-do list, right, and add to it. Something for the mind to do instead of being present in the moment. Our ego throws us these little curveballs, and the to-do list is certainly one of them. The only thing I can say is it'll still be there after you meditate.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Please.
Okay, thanks. So when we talk about this, just observe it one frame at a time, not really following. Great, right? But there are things I'd like to do in my life. There are things I've done in my life. And if I hadn't followed those thoughts, then I wouldn't have had that experience.
Well, I'm certainly not telling you,
Yeah.
not to do things in your life or not to follow thoughts. I love to read and I love to listen to music, but neither one of those activities is meditating. I love to meditate too. So, there's a time for everything.
Right.
So I'm not saying, turn everything off. I'm just saying meditation is and maybe another way of thinking about it is to give yourself a break from the normal mental turmoil and habit. Our minds are usually the first thing we notice when we sit down to meditate, especially for beginners, that our minds are just relentless. So, give yourself a break from there. Learn how to give yourself a break. It's a great gift.
So it's then kind of, quieting a little bit the excess noise, so then I can choose wisely, or choose, make a choice about, okay, what I want to do, I'm less close.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you for that. This is a beautiful way of describing it.
Thank you so much for your wonderful talk. I really got a lot out of it. With the meditation, I tend to concentrate on the breath and try to let thoughts go so I can stay in space. And I feel like empty space, I like to think of it as my connection to the universe. And it really helps me. And when thoughts come in, one thing that I remind myself is that I have all day to think about this stuff. And when you talk about that,
What was the last part?
I have all day to think about this.
Yeah.
This is my half hour every morning now. This is.
Yeah.
But, and when you mentioned that we have 60 to 80 thoughts and 90% are repetitive, to me that's obsession, and that's what I do. I get obsessed about certain things.
Join the club.
Yeah.
So this is my time, and it was really great. I read with one spiritual teacher, I can't remember who he said. They asked him, well, what do you get from meditation? And he said, nothing. He says, actually nothing. I don't get depression.
Hopefully.
I don't get anxiety. I don't get worry. And he started, and so the idea, now that I've been trying, my first attempts at meditation were over 30 years ago, and over time, I have been trying to do a practice, but I would start just, and then stop because I feel like, well, this isn't doing anything, right? Because I had some expectation of enlightenment, and it wasn't happening fast enough. It was kind of like going to the gym. I did the same thing about going to the gym all these years, and spending thousands of dollars on supplements, I wanted to be the guy on that cover, on the magazine cover, right? Well, it never happened, right? Because I would let that go. And but now that I've had this minute without this expectation, I find myself benefits of meditation on a daily basis. When I see when something happens that before would make me very angry, I can let that go, and I know it comes from the practice of letting those thoughts go. One thing that's happened is I was a huge pothead. I smoked my weight in at least once. I'm just smoking a lot of grass. Since the meditation has happened, I've stopped smoking, and it hasn't been an issue. I've gone to Marijuana Anonymous for 2 years, and it was an issue. But since the meditation's happened, it's like I'm surprised. Wait a minute, I'm not desiring it. I'm surprised. I'm just glad for right now.
The reason there's a reason why meditation is in the 12-step program.
Yeah, that's great. And the other thing I want to say is about forgiveness, and his talk has really helped a lot. And my thing was that my family disowned me completely for being gay, for their religious views. And I mean completely disowned me. Have stopped talking to me. And it's been over 20 years. My mother died. It was 20 years. She wouldn't speak to me. I am not accepted strictly because of their religious practice. Nothing that I've done because I haven't done anything.
Of course not.
But that was my identity. That was my obsession. That was my anger. And I held on to it for a long time. What I realized about the forgiveness is that to forgive myself for how I allowed that to completely control my life for many, many years and cause me incredible amount of suffering because I kept on relating to that experience. So by forgiving myself, that for the way I didn't know how to handle that, has really been really important. Much more than forgiving them, it's about forgiving myself.
I think you're probably not alone in this room.
Well, I want to thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
We're probably out of time.
No, we have, 4 more minutes, so. I wanted to get a question in at some point.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the talk. And I appreciate the idea of the window between the awareness and the response to it. And I feel like that's what meditation helps me. Outside of meditation, it helps me with that time, that response time, or what the response will be. And I was just thinking, and how you were saying, like, the things that you you relate to and other people. So on Friday I had an experience where I took the kids to the park, and there were these drug addicts hanging out at the park, and they were doing this crazy stuff, crazy behavior, and they had like pit bulls off the leash, and I was really like, had this really intense I became aware of how I was really like angry, afraid, resentful. I just had all this wave of stuff come in. But then I was like, wait a minute. I'm actually a recovering addict. They are enjoying a beautiful sunny day on whatever drug they're on, and they're like having a great time, and they don't have a place to live, and they have dogs because they like pets, and so I had a different response. I was able to sort of have a different response.
You had a compassionate response.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I saw, and so instead of screaming and calling the cops, it was like just kind of like, hey, guys, the kids are here. Can you
Thank you for that.
go twist around somewhere else? So.
Oswaldo?
Yeah, well, just one thing that reminded me when Jim was talking about the presence, like experiencing a presence, looking out of your eyes, or undefined awareness. And I remember what came to mind was something that I read a while back, which is a physical reality. You cannot really see light. You can only see when light interacts with the surface or with something else. If you're in an absolutely clean room when there's no dust in the air, and you have, let's say, laser light going across, not directly aimed at you, but just, say, going from here to there, you cannot see the beam as it's traveling across. It's only when it interacts with something that becomes apparent. So in physical reality, that happens. And it's that intuition of that, my interpretation of what you were saying is that intuition of that unseen presence that's illuminating things, the awareness that's illuminating objects that hits. So,
Well, that's also a beautiful description of what the Buddha called the illusion of our world, is that our world is made up in our brain as a result of sensory experiences. And actually, to get back to Oliver Sacks, for any of you that have read Oliver Sacks books, that's what they're largely about. Mm-hmm. People that have lost eyesight or got it back again, or lost mental faculties or use of parts of their brains, and other parts come in and compensate. And one of his books was called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, and it was actually about a man who actually did mistake his wife for a hat. So, it's an illusion. That's a great note to end on.
Well, it is time to end. We used up our hours. Thank you again for a wonderful talk. So, a couple of general announcements. One of the things that I should be saying at this point is a reminder about our Dana Bowl, how we work for generosity, and that's what sustains physical reality over here at the Friends of the Bruein, and some of the other work that we do, including the Larkin Street monthly feedings of and so forth. So there'll be, we also have, every week we have a host, and I believe
I'm the host.
one over here.
My name is Mike, and I will be coming around with Donald as Oswaldo has indicated.
Yeah, the suggested donation is $10 or more if you are there any other announcements? Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, a couple of things. Today is the mailing of our quarterly newsletter, and Jack Busby, who generally coordinates that, is away, so I'm doing it in his absence. So I will need the help of about 8 to 10 people to fold and staple and stamp and stuff, and just have a nice conversation together. And we'll start that about 15 minutes into the social time. So I'd appreciate people's help. Can people raise their hands if they'd be willing to? Oh, that's great. Thank you. Secondly, our annual fall retreat is coming up the third weekend of September. It's Friday the 18th through Sunday the 20th. It's at Vajrapani Institute, which is a Tibetan center in the Santa Cruz Mountains. We spend about 50% of our time in silence and 50% in mindful interaction and dialogue. We have the good fortune this year of having David once again as our teacher. And David, did you want to say a word?
Well, the theme this year is liberation, and it's going to be kind of a group process. As always, we look for the wisdom of the Sangha, but what kind of intrigues me and what triggered this off is the idea of a theme is that as men that have experienced gay liberation, we know something already about liberation, and we know what that means in our minds and our life habits, and we know what a big change that was in our life. Liberation is a core concept in Buddhism, and I'm going to be talking some about what it is in Buddhism, but what I'm really interested in is those two things affect each other or are similar, gay liberation and Buddhist liberation. I don't think there's much difference, so that's going to kind of be the theme. We're going to be talking a lot about identity formation, like we talked a little bit today about how we form our identities. So that's kind of the theme.
So if you're interested, we have I think there are about 8 spaces still available. And I noticed we're out of the registration flyers out here, but they are available online at our website. And feel free to talk to me if you have a question. Thanks.
Okay, any other announcements?
No one made an announcement about just going out to lunch.
Oh, yeah, a group of us go out to lunch, and we meet at the front door after the social hour, and especially for those of you that are new, that might be a good opportunity to get to know some of us a bit better. So, alrighty, so this is the time for the dedication of marriage. So, by the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow, and may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thanks again, David.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.